Brilliant. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all you incredible people from wherever you are in the world. I can see a ton of notifications coming through from the USA to Latvia to Poland. I'm sure there are people representing from every continent, probably of the world. So welcome. My name is Dr. Colin Robertson. I'm one of the scientific specialists at Zinzino, and it gives me great pleasure to be here in your company for this session. This was always intended to be about bringing people together who are probably working at the coalface, dealing with people and really facilitating change around the world with regards to improving health. And the reason why we wanted to gather such people together, that community together, is because we deal with things in a very different way to somebody who is simply buying a health product for their own purpose. We're continually questioning. We're looking for best practice. We're looking for best evidence, because our role is not just about how we care for ourselves and our families, but really the change we can make in our communities and the people who live around us. And by doing so, with that level of overlap, we start to make sizable changes across our entire society. So we look at things differently. We're interested in where the research is taking us. How much can we have faith in what it is that we're being told and what it is that we should do? And 100% when that comes to nutrition. Because I would argue that over the past 40, 50, 60 years, the language around food and what constitutes food and nutrition choices in the 21st century has been too negatively skewed, has been too interfered with, so that the average person finds it difficult now to get a clear, simple message on what's the best thing that they should do. And I staunchly believe that you are not what you eat, you are what you absorb. And that at the heart of most health matters and quality of life matters is the quality of a person's nutrition and how well their choices are for most of the time. So it's great. It's overwhelming. It's fantastic to have all of you here with us for this session today. And we're really starting off on a high note. We really are. You know, we intend to do these over the coming months, and we intend to bring some great people to the forefront to speak about the work they do and the information that they're immersed in. But we really are starting off high. It's a great personal privilege to me and a pleasure to introduce to you all, whatever time of day it is for you, the legend that is Ola Eide. Now, there are certain people who have impacted and changed dietary practice around the world in different ways. And to me, Ola is one of those who has really brought about a seismic change and really, more importantly, brought about a huge change in how people think and consider food and nutritional choices. So as this session is not about me, it's certainly about Ola. I'd like to welcome Ola to come and speak to you all, to share a part of his professional journey, really, and give you some information about what he's worked on, where he's at, his thoughts around that. And remember, this is a meeting of minds. So we have the chat box open. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat box. I'm not going to interrupt Ola as he's presenting. I wouldn't do that at all. But if you do want to have, if you have a burning question that you want to drop into that chat box, please do. I will try and pick these up, and we'll try and dedicate some time towards the close so that we can address some of those questions. And I'll probably have a few questions of my own. But this really is about us coming together. But for now, I would like to hand over center stage to Ola so that we can all sit back and benefit from what you'd like to share. Thank you, Ola.
Thank you, Colin. I will try to share the screen with you. This is not my best. I just try to find the presentation.
Just whilst Ola gets his presentation ready to launch, I've just noticed in the Q&A box that we have a couple of questions in there already, one of which is specific to the fatty acid analysis. So these are the kind of things that we'll pick up towards the end, but I've noticed that those are coming into the Q&A box. So if it's easier for everybody who's taken part to put your questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat, please do so. I'll try and keep a track on them both. But Ola, are you ready yet, sir?
Yes, I should be ready now. I can see my presentation on the screen. I hope you can too.
Brilliant. I can't, Ola, to be fair. I can't actually see it. I don't know if anybody else can. If anyone else would like to comment. No, I don't think anyone can see it yet, Ola.
And I'm not sure, how do I...
Have you put share screen?
I have tried to put share screen on.
If you
I can see you. I can see you, and
yeah. There we go.
There we are. Okay. And then we try. Yeah, now I should be there. Okay. Thank you. This is better for you. Can you see the presentation now?
We can't see your presentations, Ola. We can just see your kind of screen. I think you just need to click on your presentation and bring that to the forefront. All we can see at the moment is your browser.
All right.
There we go.
Now you can see it, okay?
Now we can see it.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Now, is this good for you? Can you see the presentation now?
Yeah, we can see your slides, Ola. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm really sorry for this bad startup. This is not my best technology of how to deal with the Zoom. But let's move on to what I do know a lot about, and that is about the Balanceoil concept. And the topic of today's presentation will be about this concept, and I will tell you more about the development history, proof of the concept, also benefits, and a little into the science, which we will hear more on in later presentations. So we start with the development history. And the original Balanceoil concept was ready in 2010, ready for the marketing. It was developed by a Norwegian company, BioActive Foods, in which I just happened to be the CEO. And it consists of 3 parts. It consists of a blood sampling device called the Zinzino balance test to detect. It is a laboratory analysis with a report providing dietary advice. And it is a dietary support supplement. And as you can see from the dates below, or the years below, the elements, these 3 elements was not developed simultaneously or in the right order. So we'll have to start to look at the history. We'll have to start with the Balanceoil and see why that was developed. The Balanceoil is a blend of fish oil, refined fish oil, and cold pressed pickerel olive oil. It is actually developed. The aim when we developed this product was to get as close as we can to the fish oil as it is within the fish, and not as it is normally today, to have a very refined and purified fish oil. And the reason for that is two reasons. Today, there is environmental contaminants is a problem in the fatty fish, and by European legislation, you have to refine any fish oil extracted extracted or produced from fish before it can be used for human consumption. And when you refine or purify a fish oil, it will be almost free from odor and taste if you do it correctly, and it will contain about 30% omega-3. But this fish oil, the refined fish oil, is also free from other bioactive components, such as the fatty acids, fatty soluble vitamins, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory components, especially fluorotanins that are lost during refining. The fluorotanins normally follow the omega-3s all the way from the plankton to the fish, to the whales, to humans, so it's important components. And normally today, to stabilize a refined fish oil or purified fish oil, we add vitamins and antioxidants, like the mixed tocopherols, back to the refined oils, while the important fluorotanins, they are not possible to put back due to low availability, but also to its terrible taste.
Ola?
Yes?
Ola, sorry, can I interrupt a second?
Yes.
There's a few people saying that it's not on full screen, the presentation slides. I'm really sorry to interrupt. Is there a button you can press that allows that to be full screen? People can only see half the slides.
Okay, I will try. It is full screen on my computer, but I will try to click on.
Yeah, it needs to go on to. If you go into the upper part of the view options, there's one that says fit to screen.
Okay.
Yeah, that one in the middle. Visning Sing Stinger. That one in the middle there.
Visnings there. Oh,
That's
okay.
the one.
Okay. Doesn't happen anything when I click on that one. So
that looks full screen to me.
okay.
Brilliant.
Is that better?
That's perfect. Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you, Ola.
Okay. I hope they didn't tell too much. There was the two first slides, but don't seem to be able to. This is okay?
Yeah, looks great now. Looks really
Okay.
good.
I think the story about refining of fish oil as a problem has already been told, but so we had to, and most of the components or some of the components which are lost during fish oil refining can be put back to the fish oil. But the important fluorotanins that are stabilizing the fish oils, they are not able to be put back due to availability and taste. So we have to look for other options. And one of the other options which is out there is when you produce extra virgin olive oil, it is produced by cold pressing of the olive. And so you don't have to refine olive oil when after it is pressed. And the extra virgin olive oil, they contain about 75% of oleic acid, but it also contains high levels of polyphenols as well as other bioactive components. So what we lose when we refine fish oil, you contain, it will be in the olive oil when that is produced. And the good thing is that the polyphenols from olive have many of the same properties as the fluorotanins from fish, and may substitute the fluorotanins when blending refined fish oil and cold-pressed olive oil. And that is the simple reason why we use a blend of refined fish oil and cold-pressed pig oil olive oil to produce the balance oil in the beginning. So balance oil is in principle more or less more a crude fish oil, more like a fatty fish than refined omega-3s. I don't know, it doesn't.
Ola, we are navigating the presentation, so if you just can say next slide, then we will play it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That will be much better for me. Okay. The original balance test, that is the test that was from the 2008 about, and it is a dry blood spot test in which you make a prick in the finger with a needle, and you take out some blood droplets, which is dropping down onto a filter paper. And on this filter paper, when the drop comes into the filter paper, it of course contains all the components of blood, and also the reactions going on in blood will be active. But when it is in the filter paper, it will dry up rather quickly. And when it dries, two things happen. The reactions or anything going on more or less stops up. And also all biohazards is very much reduced. So it will be legal to send a filter paper with a dry blood spot by regular mail to a laboratory. And the laboratory that we use is the Vitas laboratories at the Oslo Science Park, and they extract the fatty acids from this blood drop and make an analysis of the amount of the different fatty acids. So originally, this method was published by Professor Galli et al. At the University of Milan. However, it was presented to BioActive Foods by the Professor Bruno Berra and Angela Rizzo, also at the same University of Milan, who were using this technique for scientific purposes in early 2008. Okay, we can move on. So altogether today, we have, or Vitas have analyzed about 600,000 balance tests. And as we move on, we will look into some of the results coming from this test. But first of all, we have to select the fatty acids to be measured by Vitas. And those fatty acids comes from the metabolism of dietary fatty acids. And first of all, if you can click, first of all, we are measuring two saturated fatty acids, is the palmitic acid and the stearic acid, which constitute about 37 to 41% of the fatty acids in blood, depending on the diet. The second group is, if you can click, is the oleic acid, the monounsaturated omega-9 fatty acid oleic, which is somewhere between 22 and 26% in blood, also depending on diet. The third group is the omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids. The four most important ones are measured, and they will be around 30% in the blood, independent of diet, more or less independent of diet. And the last group is the omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids. We will measure the important ones, alpha-linoleic acid, EPA, and DHA, and they will be somewhere between 3 to 10% in blood normally, and also very much depending on the diet. Altogether, this if you can click, it will be about 98 to 99% of the fatty acids in blood are measured. And if you look into the effect of these fatty acids, they will affect biological processes such as inflammation, immunity, circulating lipids like the LDL cholesterol and so on, cardiovascular diseases, neuronal and visceral development, depression and aggression, and cognitive maintenance. So those fatty acids are really involved in many important biological processes. Okay, let's move on. Then in 2008, we also looked at how can we calculate some health indicators from these dietary fatty acids in the blood that is measured. And the two original health indicators was the first of all was the omega-3 indicator, which were published in 2004 by Professor William Harris at the University of South Dakota. He introduced this omega-3 index as an independent risk indicator for cardiovascular diseases, and he suggested that we should have more than 8% of EPA and DHA in a red blood cell. That should be a target to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. In 2008, when we visited the University of Milan, we also were introduced to the omega-6-3 balance indicator, the ratio between arachidonic acid and EPA by Professor Bruno Berra and Angelo Rizzo. And they suggested that the target value for this indicator should be less than 3:1, not more than 3 times arachidonic acid compared to EPA, to balance to be a balancing inflammation indicator. So if we move on, then having the tools of the dry blood spot, it is more simple to control the bioavailability of the omega-3s in the that we eat from the daily diet, including any Balanceoil. Because when we eat our daily diet, the food goes down to the stomach where the fat starts to hydrolyze, and it continues into the small intestine where it's mixed with bile acids, and then it's transported to the liver where new triglycerides are built and then put into small cholesterol particles like the LDL cholesterol, which will transport the fat in the blood. At that point, we can measure the bioavailability, and we call this value in the whole blood. We call this value the omega-3 level when it related to omega-3. And it is very simple this is the most simple way of measuring bioavailability, how much is in the blood compared to what you are eating. And then, but as we move on, the fat in the blood is of course imported into cells in the body, but it's mainly used for energy production or for building the cell membranes. That is the biggest area. And cell membranes is more or less a storage of the omega-3 or storage of fatty acids in the cells. And here we can call it the bioavailability 2, because if this was a red blood cell, we would say we call the level of EPA and DHA in this cell for omega-3 index, which was calculated by suggested by Professor Harris. But it is an easy relationship between omega-3 level and omega-3 index. If we can go on. It is a mathematical relation, so you can easily calculate the omega-3 index from the omega-3 level. And the interesting part is that omega-3 index is always a little higher than omega-3 level. So if you reach a target level of omega-3, you will always reach a target level of omega-3 index. So that makes it more easy to just measure the whole blood compared to separating out the red blood cells to do the measurement. But of course, there is one issue more. If you can click on we can move on. It is of course that if you're eating too much fat, you will also fill the fat cells. So we have to be in a controlled way with it. But this is the main route for some of the fats in your diet. Okay. Then the next step is of course to find out how much Balanceoil do we need to consume daily to be able to reach the target values of the health indicators. And it just happens after measurement, it happened to be on average about 0.2 milliliter per kilo body weight measured by the DBS thing. And I give you one example, if you can press a key, and that is 0.2 milliliter per kilo body weight. If you are 100 kilo, you will need 20 milliliters a day, and that will give you about 3 grams of EPA and DHA. And at the intake of 3 grams, you will be able to reach, at intake of 3 grams, when you're 100 kilo, you will be able to reach about 8% of the omega-3 level in the blood. So that is reaching the target level. Of course, if you are only 50 kilo, you will only need 10 milliliters, or with 1.5 gram omega-3, or if you are 65, you will only need 13 milliliters with 2 grams of omega-3 to reach the same 8% or the target in the blood. So, and then before we can sort of start marketing this on a bigger scale, we needed to look into the food safety of Balanceoil. Is it safe to eat this much of omega-3? And according to the European Food Safety Authority, intake up to 5 grams omega-3 daily does not provoke any negative effects in healthy children and adults, assuming, and this is important, assuming oxidative stability in the body. And they also say at the European Food Safety Authority that intake up to 5 grams omega-3 daily does not increase the risk of bleeding, even for individuals taking blood thinning medication. So, and 5 grams omega-3, that is the same as you will have in 33 milliliter Balanceoil. A daily dose is required for a person which is 167 kilos. So most people will be far from this level in their daily diet. So it's about this. One assumption here is important. It is about oxidative stability in the body. So we need to have enough of stabilizing components in the oil to make this oxidative stability. And we have 2 components in the Balanceoil, and one is the polyphenols from olives. And according to European Food Safety Authority, if you have a 5 milligram a day, it will contribute to protection of blood lipids against oxidative stress, which will provide oxidative stability in the body. There is also some vitamin E in the Balanceoil, which also will contribute to the protection of cell constituents from oxidative damage. And also will provide some oxidative stability in the body. And the question is, how much. The question is, of course, to find the right balance between the refined fish oil and the extra virgin olive oil, so we can provide this oxidative stability. And if you can have the next slide, this is proof of concept for this was made in the EU project called Enrich Mar in 2014. Where we had people 40 to 50 in each group that for 10 weeks were taking Balanceoil enriched yogurt or placebo. So they didn't know what they were eating. The placebo was refined olive oil at that time. What we find out that we were measuring malondialdehyde in blood, and what the results show, as if you can push a key, was that there was no changes in malondialdehyde while you were eating placebo or Balanceoil. It was stable, so that is kind of proof of concept that the mix that we are making through Balanceoil provide oxidative stability in the body. Okay. So in 2014, Zinzino acquired BioActive Foods. But although we had a distribution agreement between BioActive Foods and Zinzino going on already since 2012. So next year it will be 10 years since this distribution agreement was made. Okay. And then we can jump ahead a little up to today, to 2021, when we started to look at the balance test, and some of the things I will talk about now will deal with about 579,515 balance tests. And the first thing, of course, is to question what are the relationship between the original health indicators, the one from Harris regarding omega-3 index or omega-3 balance, if you like, or the balance or the inflammatory balance indicator from Bruno Berra and Ashla Risso in 2008. And the striking here, every point on this curve is is the average of 15,000 balance tests. So you get a smooth curve, but it is many results behind every point. And if you click a new click once more time, first of all, we will see that if you are below 3:1 or 3, as it is on the column, in the balance indicator, you will always be above 8% in the omega-3 level indicator. So these two indicators that we started out with is actually turning out to be identical. They provide the same answer. So balanced inflammation and the cardiovascular risk reduction indicator originally turn out to be identical. But for people that take the balance test, we always ask if they are using Balanceoil or if they have been using other omega-3 or if they are non-omega-3 users. And you see that the average of the 300,000 non-omega-3 users is about 17:1, 17:1, and about 3.5% of omega-3 in the blood. For those who state that they use other omega-3, we have about 70,000. They have an average of 10:1 in the arachidonic acid versus EPA, and they have about 4.5% omega-3 on average in the body. And the group of people that state that they are using Balanceoil, about 125,000 here, they have an average 5:1 on the balance scale and around 6% of omega-3 in the blood. And if we look at the curve, the Balanceoil users, they fully dominate the points to the higher omega-3 values to the right of the middle, while those who do not use omega-3, they dominate the area with the low omega-3 values. And we will look into what are the difference between those two groups. So we'll see, we take about 120,000 of the people with the low omega-3 values in the blood, and about 100,000 people which is above 6% omega-3 fatty acids in the blood. And the question is, what are the difference? Because the first group we could see as the one that is not using Balanceoil, the other group is the one that is using Balanceoil. So what are the differences? And first we will look into the fatty acids group, and we will see that if you are going as a non-omega-3 user to start using Balanceoil, the level of saturated fatty acids in your blood as a group will lower by 3.9%. Monounsaturated fatty acids is also lowered by 3.6%. The polyunsaturated omega-6 fatty acids is very little influence, only 0.7% is a little increased, while the omega-3 fatty acids are increased by 6.7%. So you could, in a way, say that when you use Balanceoil, you substitute saturated and monounsaturated fat in the blood with polyunsaturated fat, and that has been the key for the Nordic health authorities since 1975 to try to increase polyunsaturated fat at the expense of saturated fat in blood. And for the reason for their request or target has always been to lower the blood cholesterol level in the population. So what I can say here is that using Balanceoil as the omega-3 source is a very efficient way to lower saturated and also monounsaturated fat in blood. So this is for me, it was one of the surprising results of this big big number of balance tests that to see. If we move on from the groups to look at the individual fatty acids, you will see that the main changes are that palmitic acid, the saturated palmitic acid, and the monounsaturated oleic acid are the two fatty acids that is substituted mainly by EPA and DHA, but also a little arachidonic acid is also a little increased. And this is what I will call a smart step for the body, because the body is actually, if we can have a little, the body is actually taking essential fatty acids, EPA and DHA, or substituting, they are substituting non-essential fatty acids like the palmitic and the oleic acid, fatty acids that the body can produce from many other sources. So this is a smart step by the body to instead of separating, substituting omega-6 polyunsaturated, it's substitute the saturated and monounsaturated fatty acids. Okay. So I will say this is a smart way for the body to use the fat efficiently. Okay. So if we're looking into the benefits of the olive oil balance oil concept, we will start by looking into the polyunsaturated fatty acid metabolism. It is to understand the benefits of balance oil and any other oil, it is necessary to understand this concept. So if you can click on just select we'll see 3 of the fatty acids that is all measured by the balance test are producing less inflammatory eicosanoids or bioactive components. Those components are produced when these fatty acids are released from the cell membrane into the cell. And both EPA, DHA, and gamma-linoleic acid produce less inflammatory compounds. However, one of these fatty acids, if you can click one more time, one of these fatty acids, the arachidonic acid, is producing more inflammatory compounds. So 3 less inflammatory, 1 more inflammatory. And the question is of course, how are they linked to benefits of balance oil? So we'll move on to a situation to look at the real situation. And of course, this fatty acids or the polyunsaturated fatty acid metabolism is very important when you have an infection and an injury or injury, any infection, bacteria, viruses, or whatever. Or if you're injured at a football field, what will always happen is you will have an immediate and strong inflammatory response in local tissues. And we have 2 situations. We have one situation where you are a non-balanced oil user, where you have high arachidonic acid value compared to EPA. And if we press a key again, arachidonic acid will be released from the cell membrane, and it will start produce the inflammatory eicosanoids, and you will feel it as either as fever, red rash, pain, poor general condition, and so on. And you will normally you will feel that this is not you don't have a very nice day, and sometimes you will try to find some painkillers to help you, and that will also, most of them will also work on these arachidonic acid pathways to eicosanoids. However, without these responses, which is very important, these acute responses, we would probably be defenseless towards microbes and injuries that will never heal. So these are very important. On the other hand, we have this situation where you have very high arachidonic acids, where EPA is also a risk situation when it comes to chronic inflammation, the low level of chronic inflammation that may develop in the aftermath. So it is it is for many reasons better to have a balanced situation where arachidonic acid and EPA is balanced, also to avoid chronic inflammation to develop. And chronic low silent chronic inflammation is, as you all know, one of the routes to, or maybe a major route to, lifestyle diseases. So if the other situation, if we move on, the other situation is when we have a balanced ratio between arachidonic acid and EPA in the cell membrane. The same thing will happen if we just click on. The same thing will happen, but you will have a balanced release of both arachidonic acid and EPA from the cell membrane, and you will have a sort of a controlled or milder reaction or inflammatory response in local tissues when these are balanced. But the importance of this acute reaction is still very important. However, the risk of moving on into silent chronic inflammation situation or into the development of slowly development of lifestyle diseases, this risk will be reduced by having this balance. So it is a question about the acute need for inflammatory processes and also the long-term responses from these reactions that can lead to lifestyle diseases. Okay. So then I will give you just a few examples that I have just picked just because I find them interesting. And the first is about mood parameters, and that was published by Professor Angela Rizzo and co-workers already in the early 2007 or 8 or something, even earlier than that. And that was, they were looking at healthy subjects, healthy people that had high ratio between arachidonic acid and EPA, and then they provided a required amount of omega-3s to lower this ratio down to less than 5:1 at that time. And what they experienced was that all these mood parameters like anger, anxiety, fatigue, depression, confusion, and also energy, all those parameters were moving in the right direction. So people would have a better situation if they were in a balancing these fatty acids compared to if they were not having it. And they were also looking into, for instance, children that were diagnosed with ADHD, and the same thing happened. When they were balanced, the inattention and hyperactivity was reduced. This is not a cure of anything, but it makes life better for this kind of group. See. So if we move on to the next situation, which I find also very interesting, it is about asthma, but it is also about the mothers-to-be that normally took less than 0.3 gram omega-3 daily on the red area down at the graph. They were asked in the study to increase their intake during pregnancy to 2.4 gram, and due to the weight of those mothers, that means that they will easily achieve more than 8% in the blood. This is a Danish study. But the interesting part is that they follow the children after birth up to 5 years, and they saw that in 5 years span, more than half of the children, 54% of the children, there was a 54% reduction in the number of children that obtained wheeze and asthma during the first 5 years of life, as compared to the control group. So it's very easy to obtain a very some beneficial situation. Okay, we move on. The last example I will give is about blood pressure. This test or this project was done at the University Hospital in Reykjavik in Iceland, where they had about 100 persons which were 50 years and above, and that had high blood pressure or hypertension. and they were randomized into 3 different groups. The first group got Balanceoil as an oil. The second group got Balanceoil as a powder or a milkshake that we had at that time. And then there was a control group. And the intervention was that these were taking 1.5 gram omega-3 per day from Balanceoil for the period advised by the oil. And they find out in the end that the 2 groups using Balanceoil, they reduced their blood pressure on average by 7 millimeter mercury as compared to the control group. And this is so. What does this mean in practice? If we move on, there is a study based on more than 600,000 participants, or 120 different studies, that was published in Lancet by Dina in 2015, showing that high blood pressure, or stating that high blood pressure is globally the main cause of death that could have been prevented. And if you lower high blood pressure by 10 millimeter mercury, you will reduce mortality of cardiovascular disease by 13%. And if you lower the blood pressure more or less, you will reduce mortality of cardiovascular diseases proportionally. So this means that already at 1.5 gram omega-3 from Balanceoil, we reduce it by 7 millimeter mercury. But if you go on, then we can move on. If we ask the European Food Safety Authority, they will say that if you have an intake of 3 gram omega-3 daily, it will contribute to the maintenance of normal blood pressure and to lowering of triglycerides level in blood, which is another risk indicator for cardiovascular problem. So, if we had the choosing of having 1.5 gram during the study was made by the scientists, but we see that if they had used the normal Balanceoil intake, which is higher, then we would have probably achieved even a better blood pressure reduction. Okay, and this is about just a summary of some of the low-grade chronic inflammation that will be achieved, that is published when you increase the omega-3 level, or you balance the ratio of arachidonic acid in blood from favorable against asthma to reduction in blood pressure, as we see in reduction in mortality by 70% in secondary prevention of cardiovascular diseases, suppression of inflammation in patients with arthritis, and normalization of blood pressure depending on how much the intake. And so most of this is an indicator of that by increasing the omega-3 level, or by lowering the balance between arachidonic acid, you will also have an effect of the long-term, low silently developing chronic inflammation, which is part of the responsibility for most of these cases. So then I will end my presentation by showing you some of the latest results. And of course, we have asked the question, is Balanceoil a crude oil? Will it differ from other omega-3, which I called refined fish oil? Most other omega-3s are refined fish oil. Are we able to see that it is different in bioactivity? And we will look into the enzymes of the polyunsaturated fatty acid metabolism. And if you push a key, we will see that the first enzyme we will look into is elongases, which catalyze the increase from, for instance, from C18 to C20, increase or elongation of 2 carbon atoms in fatty acids. And if we push one more time, each point in this graph is the average from 1,000 up to 17,000 balance test, depending on at the omega-3 level, we can clearly see that there is a clear differences between those using other omega-3 compared to those using Balanceoil. I know it will be part of a later presentation to describe what does this mean. So, and it's out the scope of this presentation to say what it means. But what you can see from the graph is, of course, it is stimulated. The other omega-3s are stimulating this enzyme more than Balanceoil. But we can see, if we can push the key, we can see that Balanceoil as a crude fish oil and other omega-3, which are refined fish oil, they affect the enzyme elongase differently. So, and I will give you one more example of the thing which is in what we're dealing with at the moment. If you push one more key, and then I will have a look at the desaturases, the 5 desaturases, which is catalyzing the change from gamma-linoleic acid, the homogamma-linoleic acid, to arachidonic acid. So, and this is a very special enzyme because it comes in a population. You will find many genetic variants of this enzyme, and these variants they influence the level of arachidonic acid in blood. So, if you look at this from a population perspective, you will expect the arachidonic acid not to have one target value, but arachidonic acid to have more a profile in the population because of the genetic variants of this enzyme. And if we can push one more button, we will see that this is actually what happens. If we go and look at the balance test, we looked at about 100,000 of Balanceoil users and about 50,000 using other omega-3s. You see that the arachidonic acid in the blood, it will vary from less than 5% to more than 12%. So and the peak values you will find around 8-9%. But the interesting part for me in this graph is stating that if you look at to the left of the peak point, you will see that from the top peak to the left to the lower values of arachidonic acid, you will see that the Balanceoil users are dominating. While if you look at to the right, to the high arachidonic acid values, you will see that those using other omega-3 that is dominating. The yellow column is higher than the blue, and so on. So there is again clearly differences between Balanceoil, the crude fish oil, and other omega-3 refined fish oil in bioactivity, and that I think will be a very interesting presentation for later in this series for you. So you have something to look forward to. Okay, we move on to the next slide. One more time, and this is just to sum up. The Balanceoil concept is what I call a documented and proven health concept. It consists of a balance test, a dry blood spot test to detect, Vitas, a world-class laboratory to analyze, and a Balanceoil, which I will say is a proven to be a safe dietary supplement, full of science to support your healthy aging. So, one last phrase is that Balanceoil is actually a bioactive crude fish oil, more like a fatty fish than refined omega-3s. And this is important if you go all the way, and this is my final statement, if you go all the way to the beginning of the omega-3 era where you had the Inuits or the Eskimos that were seen to didn't have that much cardiovascular problem as the rest of the European population. That was the omega-3 was giving the benefit of this situation. But the real reality is that these Inuits or Greenland Eskimos, they didn't eat refined fish oil. They didn't eat omega-3 concentrate. They were mostly eating seal and fish. So that is why we try to make Balanceoil as much like fish as possible. Thank you for your attention.
Superb. Thank you.
I'm really sorry for the trouble.
Happens to everyone. It's one of those things that we've all become used to in the modern world. Ola, we've had an absolute raft of questions come through whilst you've been talking through, and some of which, because people were really keen, you've actually answered. Things like, where is the research in the area and what does this link to? So thank you for that. There's one question that's come through that was specifically aimed at me, which I'll answer now just to give you a moment to catch your breath, Ola, and then maybe we could just unpack some of these questions. There's a few that typically crop up whenever we talk about these kind of products, but there are a few specific ones. But the one I'd like to answer direct as it came to me, and I've got a feeling I know why it came to me, because it was COVID related. And for those of you who don't know, I'm a part of a task group here in the UK that is dealing with COVID and recovery from COVID. But the question was specifically with regards to what's common when a person has COVID and when they're recovering from COVID, which is a loss of appetite. So this is as much a behavioral issue as it is an issue that's kind of, pathological and related to the virus itself. So how do we overcome this issue? It's through behavior change. We have to work with the individual, and we have to build a kind of nutritional plan and pathway in order for them to not be relying on the point at which they feel hungry, which is the common cue, to then go and seek nutrition, food, and do something about it. But in an instance where somebody's nutrition is so important with regards to supporting and overcoming the negative aspects of dealing with that virus, we've got to have a strategy whereby the person has to be supported and encouraged through to change behavior, to eat and consume those foods, that good nutrition, because they have to, not because they're waiting on the hunger signal. That will re-kick in. If you have a look at any of the studies around this, it can take a varying amount of time, but that normal pathway of signal and response will become re-established. But to begin with, we've got to do those hard yards. And certainly for the person who's dealing with it, they have to do the hard yards of aligning to behavior, aligning to a nutritional script of saying, I need to eat this then. It has to be a strategy. It's got to be done in partnership with the person. You have to have a type of agreement. It has to build over time. If you overwhelm them, they simply won't comply. But it's about fostering that behavior change. That's the best advice I can give you outside of a kind of one-to-one consultation. So, Ola, if you don't mind, there's been a ton of questions. I might try and answer a couple as well, but I'm more interested to hear your take on this, because we get asked these kind of questions a lot. So first of all, I'll start with one of the really common ones we get, because it's been asked here. We know that there are more fatty acids. So why were these ones chosen? For analysis, why were these fatty acids chosen?
Yeah, they were chosen directly because they are part of the metabolism in the fat metabolism, and they constitute altogether about 99% of the fatty acids that you normally measure in blood. Those were the main. In the beginning, we only measured two fatty acids, and that was arachidonic acid and EPA, because we were only looking at the balance. But then we decided to enlarge the test by 9 more, and then they were all picked as being major fatty acid in the metabolism of fat in the body or in the blood.
Sure. I love that answer. One, because it paints a real clear picture, but also it takes me to the next question, which we get asked a lot. Why is that the ratio based off the data around the EPA and the AA? Why those two in particular?
Yeah, first of all, it is the arachidonic acid is, as you saw, the only fatty acid that produced the inflammatory eicosanoids. So, the EPA is the other fatty that produce the same kind of eicosanoids, but in another series, which means that they are less inflammatory, while the arachidonic acid ones are inflammatory. So in principle, those two are the one that is signaling or indicating the balance of the inflammatory process, or most easily way. Of course, there is other fatty acid that influence other parameters in the body and other indicators, but I decided for this presentation sort of to lower to those two, about the omega-3s and the arachidonic acid EPA. It is also for historical reason. Those were the first ones to be a part of this science field.
Yeah, that actually really conveniently leads into another question that a few people have asked, actually, which is regards to, some of the research challenges the ratio and is more favorable of the index. There's a notion that there's more behind the index, the 8%, than there is the ratio. I'm just interested in your thoughts on that.
Well, as I did in this presentation, I compared those two situations, the balance ratio and the omega index. And as I showed it, those two are identical. They started out at two different indicators, but in my opinion today, they provide the same answers. If you are below 3:1 in arachidonic acid EPA ratio, you will always be above 8% in the omega-3 index. So I consider them today. I consider them as equal indicators, saying the same as although we at the beginning thought it was two different independent indicators.
Interestingly, I take a similar view, and I like to represent both purely because I think it gives more than one dimension of insight. But I actually, typically when I'm feeding back to people, I'll make reference to their index first and then delve into the ratio. So it's interesting hearing that from you as well. And I completely agree. I think it offers more of a sharper insight. So following that thread a little bit further, questions come through that I've not actually had before, which is in instances where people have been on Balanceoil for a minimum of 120 days and they don't improve their index or ratio. What would you think would be the common causes behind that?
Yeah, we've seen that there is a certain percentage that the Balanceoil, or I think also maybe other omega-3, won't work on people, and very often we think that some of these people, some of the reasons will link back to the genetic variants of the delta 5 desaturase, which influence the level of both omega-3 and arachidonic acid levels in blood. So I think we will find when we study these genetic variants more closely, we will find a lot of those answers there. Mm-hmm. But this question has come for many years, and we haven't had a good answer before because we didn't actually really know this issue. But we already saw from the beginning that there was a certain percentage of people that didn't respond as expected. Mm. And I think we are closer now to a solution by looking at these genetic variants of enzymes.
And I guess that's a part of the benefit of having such a big data set and a growing data set. I think actually last count that I had to look at was on Friday. I think we're over 620,000 samples, and it's growing week by week, isn't it? And this gives us more opportunity to have a sharper insight, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A question. Sorry, go on.
No, absolutely. This is a fantastic situation to be. Not only is it 600,000 tests there now to be analyzed, but it's growing by 10,000 a month. So there's all kind of opportunities. Yeah, if you want to study special things, you can actually make arrangements which makes it possible. So
And any of the researchers listening out there, or people who are really keen about research, will know that N equals the population size gives you the strength of the power of the calculation statistic.
Absolutely.
And we're literally adding currently at a rate 10,000 to what's already the biggest data set of its type in the world per month. This puts us in quite a luxurious position, really, to analyze the data.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A bit of a different direction for a question, if you don't mind, if we can ask a couple of more. I'm mindful of the fact, folks, that we're over the hour, but if we can just ask a couple more questions while we have Ola, I'd like to take advantage of that. Someone's asked this, and again, it's a common question that comes up, is, Dr. Paul Clayton goes around telling everybody, which is true, that in nature, the omega-3 will be bound to a polyphenol. And then what we've done with the Balanceoil is we've rebound. We've put the polyphenol back with the omega-3. So the question is, well, why not just not separate it in the first instance?
Yeah, what we would have, if things had been easier, we would have made, instead of polyphenols, we would have made the fluorotanins together with the omega-3s, and that would be like Mother Nature do it in the fatty fish, or in the plankton, or in higher animals or higher. But the thing is that we have something called environmental contaminants, which we cannot, and due to that, that is accumulating also in fish oils or in the fish fat, and it is required by legislation to remove the environmental contaminants, and that is why we do refining. I know that refining is also done for taking away bad taste and smell and all those things, but it is required by legislation is required to take away environmental contaminants. So the good thing is, of course, that by doing so, we can make sure that the oil is safe. But the question is, how do we stabilize this oil, which is safe, but you have to stabilize it with the right components. And then it is to pick the right components which has the same properties as the fluorotanins originally has. So there is I think this is the key of what Paul is telling about. So, but it is European legislation that define the need for doing refining.
Yeah. And off the back of that, there's a question I'd like to answer that came through, and I totally understand this because people are more kind of ecologically sensitive these days, and it regards the fishing techniques. So it's important to note that Zinzino is registered with Friends of the Sea, which is all about sustainable fishing. So none of the kind of practices and things that you've seen on recent documentaries have anything to do with regards to the type of fishing that is engaged with regards to how Zinzino acquire their fish oil and the processes that go through. That's really important to us, and we understand that would be really important to you, and it's certainly of greater importance as we move forward. That is a key part of what we look at. There's been a lot of questions about specific health conditions, which we're always reluctant to go into because at the heart of a specific health condition, more often than not, there's an individual, and it's really hard for us to comment on individual health cases, and that will be us moving out of our lane, really. Yeah. But one I would like to pick up on is where people have said about Balanceoil and a person who's on blood thinning medication. Anybody who's in that situation, as far as I'm concerned, should just check with their GP, the person who is prescribing those medications, to make sure that there is no issue, there is no contraindication. But I do also tell people, and I've said this at a medical conference just recently, because it makes me laugh. When you ask your GP whether or not it's okay, your doctor, your general practitioner, whether or not it's okay, ask them, is it okay for me to eat fresh fish every single day and have some olive oil? Because if the answer is yes to that, then you're going to be all right with Balanceoil, because that's what Balanceoil is. So,
that is true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It is actually eating natural food in a way. Balanceoil would be defined as a food.
Yeah. And
it could be on any shelf in any shop if needed.
It's nice to hear you say. I say that to lots of people. Oh, well, it's nice to hear you say it. And I find that sometimes people have a real high reactivity when you think of something being called a supplement. But when we get to the heart of it, this is just good food. It's good fish and it's good olive oil. And that's what you're asking if you can take. And that'll just lead us into maybe the last question or two, which hovers around pregnancy. Recently, the Australians have changed their guidelines. So they're encouraging women who are pregnant or intend to be pregnant to make sure that they have a sufficient amount of omega-3 daily. So that they've done a ton of research around that. That's published, it's open access. You can all go and retrieve that. And what they're saying is that they want people to be at the right recommended dose. They don't want people to add on top of that. They just want you to be at the right dose. Taking Balanceoil puts you at the right recommended daily dose. There are some guidelines in certain parts of the world that encourage pregnant women, once they are about 30 weeks, to reduce that a little bit. I would say I would encourage you to have a look at what's implicated in your specific geographical area. But what we do know is that both the EPA and the DHA play a huge and positive and important role on the development of the child. So, it's as vital here as it is in any other kind of health indices. So I think really, because we are championing past the time now, and the vast majority of people have stuck with us, so they must be enjoying and benefiting from what we're talking about. I think if we just finish with one question, and then I'd ask you, Ola, really for one last statement. So the last question that I would pose on this is really, there's been a ton of information come through that has asked about the dry blood spot test itself and why we've chosen that method. And as you were there at the inception of this, if you'd just like to explain that would be terrific.
Yeah, the easy way of that. It's really two reasons why we chose the dry blood spot. First of all, is the ease of making a prick in the finger by a needle and take out a couple of drops of blood instead of going into a vein and extract a large blood sample. That is the only. That is the ease is one of the issue. The other issue is that when this blood dries on the filter paper, it's very, very important to dry it, to make it stand in the air to dry. Air dry is okay before you send it onto the laboratory. The blood hazards is the hazards that you will have with a large sample of blood is reduced to a level where you can send it by ordinary mail to a laboratory to have it analyzed. And you can actually take this blood sample in the jungle and in a hospital or in an apartment if you like. So it is the ease of doing this, and the results is proven in many ways to be more than good enough for and it's actually dry blood spot testing is increasing or widen a lot now for many, and it's been used for many years. So it's not a new technology; it is a well-developed technology.
Yeah, it's a well-verified test. And just to make it clear, folks, you don't have to go to the jungle to do that test. You have that. So before we wrap up, and I have a few closing comments, is there a closing comment from you? We really appreciate this, by the way, Ola. I thought the presentation answered so much. It was interesting because I was watching questions coming through, and then your presentation was actually answering things as we went through. But is there any kind of closing comment that you'd like to make before we wrap up?
Yeah, for me, the most important part about Balanceoil and the combination with the test is that Balanceoil is, as far as we can, as well as we can make today, sort of a crude fish oil. As far as we can go into making something which is the fish and Mother Nature has used many years to develop. And I think as long as we don't go for the refined omega-3s, that route, I think is the wrong route, and especially the omega-3 concentrates, which is moving us even further away from what Mother Nature has developed for millions of years. That is so it's a good. We are at a good level now, and we have to be. Of course, it can always be better in product development. We can find things that is even better and add things which makes it more better in the longer run. But presently, I think we have chosen a very correct strategy to make something which can last last for a very long time, and not as a very quick fix with some refined omega-3s. Thank you.
Thank you, Ola, and thank you for your time and for sharing your insights and your understanding and making it so easy to access. I really appreciate it on behalf of myself, and I'm sure everybody who's attended today. For everybody else, I'd like to thank you for participating, for dedicating your time, for working in the areas that you do and bringing about such positive change as we move things forward. Health across the world needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed within the heart of the community. And I thank you all for playing a part in that. We will reconvene on the 10th of June, time to be confirmed. I would imagine it'll be a similar time of day as this. And we are going to welcome at that point the famous and infamous, I would have to say, Dr. Paul Clayton. Paul's going to come along and share his insights and understanding, which is a surefire to be as informative as it will be entertaining. So please do look out for the more announcements on that and join us on that one. Stay well. Until then, thank you for being a part of all of this. Thank you for taking part today. And I look forward to speaking to you all further down the road. Thank you again, Ola. Thank you, everybody who's put this together. Stay well, and we'll all speak soon.
Thank you, Colin.